The 1990s was a transformative decade for the horror movie genre. From Jurassic Park to Anaconda, many terrifying and malicious monsters were presented on the big screen and have become cult classics. These movies very effectively utilized the elements of horror, visual effects, and humor to captivate the audience and leave a lasting impact for generations to come. Today at Marvelous Videos, we are going to dive deep and discuss Creature Feature Flashback while discussing 10 of the 90s monster movies that were way ahead of their time. So, let us begin. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Tremors. Tremors tell the story of two regular handymen, Val and Earl, who battle strange underground creatures that have haunted the city of Bixby. The movie begins with a duo taking a trip to Bixby from their town, Perfection in Nevada, to escape their monotonous life. While on their way, they discover the death of many residents, with their bodies often found severed. Believing that a serial killer is on the loose who has been doing this, they try to warn the city folks, only to realize that all the telephone lines, for some unexplained reason, have been dead. Before they can contemplate the situation, a vicious snake-like creature emerges, wrapping itself around their truck. While they proceed on their quest, a massive underground worm-like creature unexpectedly bursts from the earth, implying that the snake they had encountered earlier was merely one of the worm's numerous tentacled tongues. Val and Earl soon learn that these creatures could be hunted down by detecting their vibrations, and by pairing up together with the seismologist, Rhonda, they embark on their journey to save the people. When they go back into the town, they find the residents have been forced onto rooftops to protect themselves from the unprecedented attack of this virulent monsters. The trio finally devises the plan to escape these creatures by using a modified track loader, but they get trapped when the creatures disable it. Finally, they decide to combat these monstrous worms using pipe bombs. Towards the climax, they trick the final worm into falling off the cliff and dying on the rocks below. In the happy ending, we see the survivors returning to town, and Val and Rhonda are shown beginning their romantic relationship. The movie's monsters were described as graboid, prehistoric worm-like creatures that fed on human flesh. The movie continues to be part of the good nostalgic times for many, given that it very effectively carried the monster survivalist premise along with a much-needed comedic relief. Starship Troopers. The movie is set in a futuristic era when humans have become capable of undertaking intergalactic space travel. Driven by desires to conduct extraterritorial colonization missions on other planets, humanity comes into conflict with another alien civilization. These alien creatures are an ultra-evolved group of insects called arachnids, or bugs. We are then introduced to a young mobile infantry recruit, Rico, who had resigned from the military after his mistake during the training led to the death of one of his squad members. But he later re-enlists himself to avenge the death of his parents after an asteroid that the arachnids had sent had destroyed the city of Buenos Aires. This is followed by an invasion force being deployed to the arachnids' home planet, Klendathu. This invasion turned disastrous for the humans as the military was unable to counter arachnids' defensive capabilities. After recovering from his injuries, Rico, along with his other squad members, joins Lieutenant Razak's elite commander unit, the Roughnecks. He then defeats a giant bug on a disputed planet of Tango Urilla and is promoted to the position of corporal. Soon after this, the Roughnecks are ambushed by the bugs after they respond to a distress call that they had received from another arachnid-controlled planet. However, it is later revealed that this was all deliberately planned to confirm the existence of a brain bug, an intelligent arachnid that was responsible for directing all the other creatures. Towards the movie's climax, the brain bug is captured and put into an invasive study to decode its mechanism so that it could be used to protect humans in case of any future attack. This movie was one of the highest grossing movies of that year and had positioned itself as a cult classic interstellar war movie. The monsters here were evil insectoid alien species that mostly resembled bugs with giant metallic tentacles that could pierce through a human being in seconds. The Relic. The story begins with anthropologist Dr. John Whitney exploring a tribal ceremony in Brazil. He ships a crate of artifacts, including a relic, and leaves on a separate route. However, Whitney mysteriously disappears. The artifacts, including some strange leaves covered in fungus, arrive at the Chicago Museum of Natural History. Shortly after, the ship carrying Whitney's belongings is found abandoned. When investigated, its crew is found gruesomely slaughtered. Meanwhile, in Chicago, evolutionary biologist Dr. Margot Green is preparing for the museum's grand event gala. We are then introduced to Lieutenant Vincent DaGosta, who leads the investigation to uncover the mystery behind the gruesome murders. But soon, more sinister activities begin following, and one of the museum guards is found decapitated, similar to how the victims on the ship. The investigators accord these heinous murders to a serial killer on the loose, but as the murders escalate, it becomes increasingly evident that it couldn't be an act of a human being alone. Many begin suspecting that these might be the doing of a monstrous creature. The creature is then revealed to be a product of an evolutionary mutation caused by consuming mysterious leaves. It possesses a combination of human and reptilian features, growing into a massive, predatory beast. This monster, known as the Cathoga, was inspired by myths from the Brazilian tribe that Whitney was studying. DaGosta and Margot work to uncover the truth. They discover that Whitney unknowingly consumed the plant, which triggered a transformation into the Cathoga. This creature is driven by its intense need to consume certain human hormones that lead it to kill people brutally. The film's climax takes place during the museum's gala, where hundreds of high-profile guests are trapped as the creature attacks. Dr. Margot ultimately lures the Cathoga into the museum's basement laboratory, setting it ablaze by an explosion triggered by chemicals, and the fire consuming the creature. The monster in this movie is inherently a human who has been transformed into a malicious creature beyond recognition due to some unexplained chemicals and biological reactions inside the body. Even though the movie received decent reviews in the beginning, many are comparing it to other Minster Predator movies like The Aliens, Predators, and the iconic Godzilla. The Mimic. New York City has been grappling with an unexplained epidemic that targets young children and is spread by cockroaches. To contain it, an entomologist, Dr. Susan Tyler, and her husband designed a genetically engineered new insect species called the Judas breed. The Judas is basically responsible for killing the roaches, and it was designed so that it is incapable of breeding and evolving. This plan proves to be effective and eradicates the epidemic. However, 3 years later, it is revealed that these new creatures had not only managed to survive all this while, but also evolved into enormous creatures with wings. Above all, the Judas breed has also learned to mimic human beings, which they use to trap their prey. This creature can also disguise itself as a human by folding its wings and exoskeletons into humanoid shapes. In order to discover more about their existence and counter them, the doctor couple, along with a transit cop named Leonard, decide to venture into the deep tunnels of the NYC subway. Upon arrival, the team discovers that the Judas have not only managed to breed successfully, but also have established a massive hive or a colony that the Queen guarded. Moreover, it turns out that these creatures are not just some mindless monster hunters, but rather intelligent and have excellent predatory skills. The movie's climax follows the group trying to escape, but being hunted down one by one, as the Judas could easily blend in as humans and deceive them. In the end, the hive is destroyed in a fiery explosion, and the surviving members luckily escape the tunnel. But the movie also leaves the audience wondering if all the Judas breed insects have been eradicated or not. The Judas creatures resemble the Frankenstein monster gone wrong in a scientific experiment that had an altruistic motive. These creatures are sadistic and violent in every possible way, even commercially. The movie did not manage to amass numbers. The fans continued to describe it as good as it had any right to be. Many also appreciate the movie for its stylish horrors with great visuals, while appreciating its innovative monster creation. Event Horizon. The movie is set in a futuristic era of 2047, when a spaceship that had gone missing 7 years earlier has suddenly reappeared. The spaceship, called the Event Horizon, was equipped with an experimental gravity drive that could enable it to create artificial black holes so that it could travel faster into space. When the rescue crew, led by Captain Miller and accompanied by Clark, Lewis, and Dr. William, reach the Event Horizon, they are left shocked. To their horror, they find evidence of extreme violence, indicating that the former crew might have, for some unexplained reason, lost their sanity and succumbed to madness. Soon enough, a strange phenomenon also begins affecting the rescue team as they start hallucinating and recalling their fears and traumas. Dr. William proposes a hypothesis, claiming that the unusual gravity in the spaceship might have opened up a gateway to another dimension altogether that could have been marred by chaos and violence. He also expresses that some malicious sentient force from another dimension is still looming inside the spaceship, and it's feeding onto the crew's fear and guilt, and thus pushing them into insanity. As the movie progresses, Captain Miller and the crew members fight to survive the Event Horizon, as its influence keeps getting stronger. At one point in time, Dr. William gets consumed by the ship's evil forces and attempts to sabotage the entire survival mission. He seems to be deluded by the perception that the ship is some sort of a gateway to a higher, more powerful dimension. When Miller finally confronts Dr. William in the climax scene, he unfortunately dies, but is able to save the rest of the crew members. He uses the gravity drive to separate the Event Horizon's core, sending it and its evil presence back into the other dimension where it belongs. Even when the movie ends, it leaves the audience wondering if the evil has been successfully evaded, or if it has followed the remaining crew members back to Earth. Unlike other movies, the monster in Event Horizon is not some alien physical creature, but an intangible vicious force that controls people by harnessing their vulnerabilities. This is why this movie is considered one of the cult sci-fi horrors, which, even though it remains underrated, still manages to give chills to the fans even after 2 decades. Species. The story begins with a governmental experiment conducted by Dr. Xavier. The experiment is based on fusing the human DNA with that of another alien species to create a new life form altogether called Syl. Syl grows up faster than normal human children, and she has extraordinary strength, unbeatable intelligence, and very efficient regenerative abilities. When the scientists possibly gauge the dangerous repercussions of the project, they decide to terminate Syl, but she manages to escape, seeking to reproduce and propagate her species. After growing up to be an adult woman, Syl very cleverly uses her human appearance to seduce men to mate with them, and also brutally kill anyone who seems to endanger her plan or intend on harming her. In order to counter her reign of terror, a team is formed that includes Dr. Xavier, some other biologists and anthropologists, along with a government assassin. The chase begins, and the team finally confronts Syl in her monstrous form in a sewer while she's giving birth to her offspring. In an ensuing battle, Syl and her offspring are destroyed, but at the end, a rat is shown consuming the remaining DNA, indicating a possible resurrection that might follow. The movie's greatest horror element isn't the newly designed monster, but the possible catastrophe that might follow if human biology and genetics are unduly manipulated without adequately considering the possible outcomes. The movie received mixed reviews, but was well praised for its unique concept and striking visual designs. The Faculty. The movie explores the story of 6 teenage students of Harrington High School who discover that a parasitic alien species has taken over their teachers and other students. Upon further research, the group concluded that these parasitic creatures function as a hive mind, which a single queen controls. And in order to bring things back to normal, they must destroy her before she expands her invasion. The group begins using a drug to dehydrate and kill the aliens while fighting the teachers and students who have been gripped with paranoia. Towards the end, it is revealed that the queen alien was none other than one of their groupmates, Mary Beth, who was a new schoolgirl. In the climactic battle, Mary Beth is defeated and killed, thus freeing all the infected survivors. Many describe this movie as a sparkling sci-fi horror hybrid, fun and a great take on Body Snatch's story. There are no apparent monsters here either, but the idea of your already frightening teacher in school magical faculty being possessed by some alien power makes it a gripping sci-fi horror thrill watch. Deep Rising. The film begins with a group of mercenaries hiring a crew of smugglers to carry out their mission of infiltrating and looting a massive luxury cruise ship, the Argonautica, led by their commander, John Finnegan. When the crew reaches the ship, to their bewilderment, they discover that the ship has been abandoned with signs of destruction and violence everywhere. Upon further investigation, they come across a few survivors who inform them that all this havoc had been created by a massive tentacle sea monster called the Octalis. These monstrous creatures had suddenly emerged from the abyss and attacked the ship and its occupants. The story turns into a desperate fight for survival as the group tries to escape the ship, which is also sinking due to structural damage. Tensions rise further as the mercenaries' greed overcomes them and they begin clashing with each other. Finnegan, along with one of the survivors, Trillian, assumes leadership and devises a plan to evade both the creatures and the increasingly erratic mercenaries. Towards the climax, there's a final confrontation between the duo and the sea monster, Octalis, and they narrowly manage to survive by landing on a deserted island. The movie is still well received by its audience for the seamless blend of humor and horror it presents. The suspense and the action scenes are top-notch, and the visual effects are no less impressive. The monster in Deep Rising is genuinely one of the most terrifying and grossest creatures to look at, especially when it opens its mouth before devouring another victim. Anaconda. The story follows a documentary crew led by Terry Flores and director Dr. Stephen Cale who embark on a journey down the Amazon River to film an obscure indigenous tribe. Along the way, they encounter Paul Cerrone, a mysterious and shady snake hunter who claims to know the river and offers to guide them. As they continue their journey, the crew slowly becomes aware of Cerrone's sinister motives, which is to hunt a giant legendary green anaconda, a massive and deadly snake that is as intelligent as it is lethal. Cerrone's obsession and incessant persuasion endanger the crew members as he is hell-bent on hunting down that terrifying creature. One by one, the crew falls victim to both Cerrone's treachery and the deadly anaconda. In the climax scene, the surviving crew members confront the anaconda and Cerrone in the hope of surviving. The movie ends up with Terry and cameraman Danny Rich ultimately managing to overcome both Cerrone and the snake, defeating the monstrous predator and escaping the jungle alive. 25 years after its release, Anaconda remains a cult classic monstrous horror action movie. Its action scenes and cinematography are considered at par with Jurassic Park movies, and its monster, the giant predatory snake creature, has terrified people across generations. Arachnophobia. The film begins in the Amazon rainforest, where a research expedition led by entomologist Dr. James Atherton discovers a new species of spider. This spider turns out to be a highly venomous, aggressive, and capable of killing its prey within seconds. Unknowingly, the spider is transported to the small town of Kanema, California. In Kanema, Dr. Ross Jennings, a reputed physician who suffers from severe arachnophobia, hopes to start a new life by taking over the practice of the retiring town doctor. However, his plans are disrupted when the older doctor decides not to retire after all. Meanwhile, the deadly spider from the Amazon escapes from the coffin and mates with a local house spider. The offspring then produced established a new colony of highly venomous spiders and quickly began spreading throughout the area. The spiders also establish a nest in Jennings' barn, with him or his family being unaware of this. Soon, a series of mysterious deaths began to occur in the town, including that of a young football player, a middle-aged woman, and even the town's longtime doctor. Initially, these deaths are attributed to unrelated medical issues, but Jennings grows suspicious when he notices the victims all have similar bite marks. To better contemplate the situation, Jennings contacts Dr. Atherton, who has sent his assistant, Chris Collins, to investigate the matter further. Chris successfully identifies the spider as as an unusual and a deadly hybrid species capable of creating a large colony. When Atherton himself arrives, he deduces that the colony has a central nest, which should be in proximity to Jennings' home. As the spiders continue to spread and claim more victims, Jennings teams up with other doctors to locate and destroy the nest. Towards the end of the movie, Jennings discovers the nest in his barn and realizes that the queen and her male consort are responsible for the colony's reproduction. The climax of the movie features a final confrontation as Jennings finally overcomes his phobia of spiders, destroys the queen, burns down the colony, and kills the massive male spider in the basement, narrowly escaping his own death. The monster in Arachnophobia is not the regular-sized spider, but the fear that it generates within people who have a phobia of spiders. Also, if you easily get grossed out by seeing a lot of tiny insects curling around, then this movie might be terrifying for you. Even though it failed to be a commercial success, it registered well with the audience, so much so that many claim that they check their shoes for spiders even to this day. Marvelous verdict. Well, this was our list of the most harrowing and entertaining monster horror movies. Now, in the comments section, please let us know which of these had chills running down your spine and gave you sleepless nights. We will soon be back with yet another marvelous video, so stay tuned. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.